The morning was marked by a sound London would not forget. The ominous, truncated echo of palace bells tolling twice before falling into a deep silence, a mystery compounded by the royal flag flying at half-mast above Buckingham Palace. By 10:30 a.m., the palace confirmed the nation's gravest fears with a solemn decree from His Majesty regarding the future of royal titles within the House of Windsor. The statement was mournful yet merciless, offering no explanation or names, but within the hour the devastating truth emerged. Prince Harry, his children Archie and Lilibet, and Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie had been stripped of their titles. For the first time in generations, a reigning monarch had taken the profoundly personal step of revoking the royal status of his own family, a decision insiders described with biblical gravity as King Charles, his hand trembling with resolve, signed the decree with the future King William standing in silent solidarity behind him. This final painful act, set in motion by Prince Andrew's forced retirement days prior, represented the drawing of a definitive line, a monarchy brutally reshaped and reborn through irrevocable loss. The streets outside the palace swiftly filled with a clamor of cameras and clashing voices as a single haunting question echoed across the globe: what could drive a king to take a symbolic knife to his own bloodline? The answer took root in the heavy contemplative atmosphere of Sandringham, where a pale and weary King Charles, working from his mother's old desk, was forced to confront a long-postponed reckoning. The catalyst was Prince Andrew's public retirement announcement on October 17th, which, rather than closing a scandal, ignited a firestorm of public demand for deeper reform and exposed the monarchy's outdated structure. When Prince William arrived that evening, a private meeting unfolded, culminating in the most painful decision of Charles's reign, a merciless decree to strip titles from Harry, his children, and his nieces, not merely as a political calculation, but as a final desperate act to save the monarchy by severing its most contentious branches, a heartbreak meant to ensure the institution's survival by sacrificing a part of its own family. According to insiders, the fate of the monarchy was decided during a nearly 3-hour private meeting between King Charles and Prince William at Sandringham, where their review of historical precedents and grim cost analyses gradually evolved from a discussion of efficiency into a profound matter of legacy. It was William who, in a quiet but pivotal moment, urged his father, "You have to be the one to finish what you began," solidifying the king's resolve. When Camilla entered near midnight to caution that the decision would irrevocably fracture the family, Charles, gazing out at the darkened gardens, countered with a poignant whisper, "So did my mother's coronation, but she still wore the crown." By dawn, the paperwork was drafted and the Privy Council notified, signaling a point of no return. This was to be not merely a legal act, but a full royal reckoning. The first public hint of the coming storm arrived just before midnight via a cryptic leak in the Times, which reported on discussions to redefine active royal status, a carefully placed piece of speculation that set the stage for the seismic decree to come. By sunrise, television studios across Britain were flooded with commentators debating whether the king was preparing to redraw the royal map itself, a frenzy ignited by a cascade of subtle signs noticed by royal watchers, from Beatrice and Eugenie cancelling a charity event to Prince Edward's unusual private audience with the king. Behind closed doors in Sandringham's drawing room, the air was taut with the weight of the impending decision, as documents lay scattered across the grand oak table and King Charles sat in quiet contemplation. It was Prince William, pacing the room, who framed the move with stark clarity, insisting to his father, "This isn't about punishment, it's about survival." Yet for others in the family, the decision felt like a profound betrayal. Princess Beatrice reacted with diplomatic sorrow, questioning why reform must cost them their dignity, while her sister Eugenie, who had diligently balanced royal life with a private career, was furious, feeling that despite having done everything right, they were being unfairly cast out in a brutal act of consolidation, revealing a monarchy being reborn through painful contraction. As the British morning broke, the Sussex household in California awoke to the looming crisis, with Meghan learning of the impending decision through a journalist's email and Harry responding to the news with a stony, wounded silence, his quiet remark, "No, and I won't be calling first," signaling a profound new depth to the familial rift. Even Camilla, who had attempted to mediate, confided in a friend that the king's mind was immovably set, noting that once Charles believes an action protects the crown, no one can dissuade him, not even family. Meanwhile, the palace machinery whirred into action under the veil of night, its corridors buzzing with staff ferrying sealed envelopes and senior officers preparing contingency statements under the clandestine operational banner of Project Clarity. By dawn, the 10-page document, stamped with the royal crest, was complete, outwardly a sterile legal adjustment, but privately an emotional earthquake that would irrevocably reshape the House of Windsor. Those who had seen the draft noted its unmistakable tone, formal yet sorrowful, bearing the mark of Charles's own hand, with one line standing out in stark italics: "Titles are a reflection of service. When service ends, so too must the title." The family would remain in the dark until the moment the world learned the news, and even the courtiers tasked with printing the final version felt a profound unease, as though witnessing history repeat itself in another generational schism. When the bells tolled at 8:30 the next morning, the kingdom awoke not to a death, but to the strange spectacle of a monarchy mourning its own bloodline in the name of renewal. Inside Sandringham's sunlit gallery, a deep, hesitant silence settled over a meeting that was both a family council and a constitutional event. The table set with red-backed folders marked Titles Review and 2 pens, one for the king, one for the heir. Charles entered with the visible weight of the crown upon his stooped shoulders, followed by a composed but tense William, while Camilla lingered silently by the window, her tea untouched, until the king finally sat and broke the silence with a sorrowful admission: "I never thought it would come to this." In the sunlit gallery of Sandringham, King Charles acknowledged with quiet resolve that the monarchy could no longer carry everyone forever, as Prince William meticulously laid out the unassailable arguments of public resentment, financial cost, and political pressure, framing the decision not as punishment, but as a necessary act of credibility. When Camilla voiced the human cost, asking what of the family, credibility won't comfort them, Charles countered that while they would retain their dignity, the crown must have its clarity. At 10:45 a.m., the only sound in the room was the scratch of the king's pen as he signed the decree, exhaling a final "so be it" that set the palace machinery into motion. Sealed orders were dispatched, and within hours the BBC newsroom fell still as journalists read the historic, tersely worded press release announcing that His Majesty the King, with the advice of the Privy Council, has approved adjustments to the style and title of certain members of the royal family, a bureaucratic phrase that marked the end of one era and the brutal, calculated beginning of another. The list that followed sent immediate shockwaves through the world. Prince Andrew's title was withdrawn permanently. Prince Harry and his children, Archie and Lilibet, were stripped of their HRH styling, and Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie were to be addressed henceforth as Lady. Outside Buckingham Palace, the public reaction was divided, with some cheering and many weeping, one observer comparing it to watching a family portrait being torn in half. Across the Atlantic, the news reached a dark and silent Montecito home, where Harry and Meghan's single-line response, "The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have no comment," spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Beatrice and Eugenie, caught off guard at Royal Lodge, reportedly broke down in tears, with Beatrice later confiding, "We knew it was coming, but not like this, not all at once." While the palace framed the move as necessary modernization, the public experienced it as a day of mourning, symbolized by the dimming of the Buckingham Palace lights that evening, a gesture of reflection that found its echo in the king's private study, where Charles sat alone with the final decree until Camilla joined him, resting a hand on his shoulder with the quiet affirmation, "You've done what you believed was right." In the quiet of his study, King Charles could only nod at Camilla's whispered assurance, his gaze fixed on a photograph of his young sons laughing with their mother in the gardens of Highgrove, a stark contrast to the solemnity of the moment. After a long silence, he voiced a painful truth to the empty room: right is rarely kind. Outside, a gentle, steady rain began to fall, as if the sky had joined the nation in its collective mourning. The following morning, the United Kingdom was suspended in a state of somber disbelief. London felt heavy with a public grief that television anchors struggled to articulate, while the courtyard of Buckingham Palace stood in a strange stillness, filled with tourists holding Union Jacks and handwritten signs pleading family first. Across the Atlantic, the dawn in California was shattered by chaos, with news helicopters circling the Sussex estate mere minutes after the decree was announced, capturing the global scale of a royal heartbreak that had fractured a family in plain sight. As Prince Harry was seen departing his Montecito home in a dark SUV, his jaw set firmly behind sunglasses, a source revealed that Meghan was devastated, not for herself, but for the children who had lost an inheritance they never asked for. Back in Britain, while Beatrice and Eugenie maintained a wounded silence, their mother, Sarah Ferguson, launched a quiet rebellion wrapped in grace, posting on social media that titles do not define them, their hearts do, a message that resonated with nearly 1 million supporters within hours. Prince Andrew, whose own scandal had triggered the reform, offered a clipped, emotionless comment of respect for the crown, a response that belied the sting of being permanently swept from the royal fold. Inside the palace, the remaining family gathered for a conversation without smiles, the air thick with unsaid words over untouched tea, until Princess Anne pierced the heavy silence by asking, "And what will be left when there's nothing left to take?" Outside the palace walls, the nation was divided, with polls showing 68% of the public supported the king's decisive action for a leaner monarchy, while a vocal 28% condemned it as a cold and unforgiving fracture of the very family it was meant to protect. The global press framed the seismic decision as a Shakespearean drama, with American networks turning it into a primetime spectacle, CNN calling it the crown's reckoning, while Fox News questioned if the monarchy had overreached, all as social media erupted into a digital battlefield of competing hashtags like royal reform and justice for Harry. In the aftermath, Prince William's strained public demeanor spoke volumes. At an engagement in Manchester, he appeared pale and thinner, responding to a question about family unity with the painfully precise, "We are aligned in purpose." For King Charles, the weight of leadership grew heavier, his mood described by aides as somber but resolute as he worked late and refused visitors, leading one to quietly observe that while the king believes he saved the monarchy, it's cost him the family that once gave it meaning, revealing the profound personal sacrifice embedded within the historic institutional reform. As a quiet melancholy settled over the realm in the days following the decree, the full weight of the decision became clear. The fallout was unlike anything Buckingham Palace had seen in decades, with newspapers across Britain unifying under the headline, "The King Draws the Line," accompanied by the inescapable symbolism of Charles signing papers beneath the portrait of his late mother. Yet beyond this polished narrative of reform lay a staggering human cost, where family trust had been replaced by a stunned silence. Beatrice and Eugenie retreated from public view, with a friend revealing Eugenie wept not over the lost title, but over the devastating message that she never really belonged at Windsor, while Prince Andrew remained hidden at Royal Lodge. In the deepening quiet, King Charles himself seemed to bear the heaviest burden, staring into a dying fire at Sandringham and whispering to the empty room the profound truth that now defined his reign: every crown is made heavier by what it must destroy. In the wake of the decree, the reactions laid bare a deep transatlantic and generational schism. While Prince Andrew's lawyer issued a terse statement of respect, insiders revealed he viewed it as a final exile, a sentiment echoed explosively across American media, which framed the event as a Shakespearean tragedy, and for Meghan, a stark confirmation that the institution protects itself, not its people. Domestically, the response was sharply divided. Older Britons largely applauded the king's decisive duty, while younger audiences saw a ruthless act, sparking a digital duel of hashtags like family over titles. Behind the scenes, Camilla emerged as the family's emotional anchor, mediating between fractured members, while the true cost of the decision became visible on the king himself. His already delicate health faltered under the immense strain, forcing his doctors to adjust his schedule as the weight of a crown, now heavier with what it had destroyed, began to visibly age the monarch. As the monarchy settled into its new, smaller shape, the human cost of the reform became increasingly palpable. William, despite enjoying 72% popularity in polls, bore the weight of silence, privately grappling with the guilt of being perceived as the architect of the purge while publicly maintaining a steadfast front. The image of a leaner, more efficient crown was powerful on paper, yet its reflection was tinged with heartbreak, symbolized by the now sparsely populated balcony of Buckingham Palace. The emotional toll was most profound on the king himself. Late one evening, an aide overheard Charles in his study, not working but softly humming an old Scottish lullaby his mother once sang, a moment where the grandeur fell away to reveal an old man mourning the family he had sacrificed to save the institution he loved. In that fragile stillness, the nation was reminded that the price of modernization is not written in law but in blood, and though the storm had subsided, its echoes of loss lingered in every corridor of the royal estate. Buckingham Palace may have stood immovable and illuminated as ever, but the monarchy it represents has been fundamentally and irrevocably altered. While the official narrative champions a tidy, necessary modernization, a pragmatic response to shifting public opinion, and the need for a streamlined, taxpayer-efficient institution, this analysis obscures a far more profound and human tragedy. The uncomfortable truth is that in its quest to protect its image and ensure its survival, the monarchy has sacrificed its familial soul, creating a stark generational clash between legacy and evolution. We are witnessing not merely royal reform but the collision of power and bloodline, where fathers and sons are severed, sisters feel exiled within their own lineage, and the cold calculus of duty, as learned by William from his grandmother, decisively outweighs the messy bonds of emotion, leaving a unified public symbol now fractured by the quiet, aching cost of its own preservation. The monarchy's seismic shift, while framed as a necessary act of preservation, ultimately exposes the tragic paradox at the heart of its survival. In choosing the cold strength of duty over the warm, messy bonds of humanity, King Charles may have fortified the institution's walls, but risked breaking the very spell of unity that gives it meaning. This is not merely a political reform but a profound human drama, a generational clash where William's ingrained belief in duty above all has collided with Harry's plea for humanity, leaving Charles to make a choice that history will judge either as that of a savior or a patriarch who sacrificed his family to save its name. Yet in their very public heartbreak, the Windsors hold up a mirror to us all, reminding us that every family, royal or not, grapples with the same eternal conflict between what is efficient and what is right, between the comfort of tradition and the painful cost of truth. Their story, at its core, is a powerful lesson in the fragile emotions of pride, fear, and love that rule us all, revealing that even those born to wear a crown are never free from the weight of the heart. We are drawn to the spectacle of royalty not for the glittering crowns or the ancient pageantry, but because in their most searingly human moments, they become a grand gilded mirror for our own lives. Their struggles, played out on a global stage, are magnified versions of the universal tensions we all navigate, the heart-wrenching choice between unwavering duty and unconditional love, the clash between the relentless march of progress and the deep comforting pull of tradition. As the last of the autumn light bleeds from the sky over Sandringham, one can almost picture the king retreating into the profound silence of his study, the weight of the day settling upon his shoulders. He sits alone, the ink on his historic decree now fully dry, a tangible symbol of an action that can never be undone. In the stillness, he is left to confront the ghost of his own decision, wondering if the heavy, impersonal judgment of history will ever justify the intimate, personal quiet that has followed, a quiet broken only by the echoes of fractured relationships. Outside, the royal standard is hoisted back to the top of the mast, a public signal of renewal and forward motion. Yet for those who understand the depth of what has transpired, it also represents a chilling finality. The monarchy, that ancient and resilient institution, will indeed continue its timeless rhythm, but it is now fundamentally altered, forever marked by the cracks that appeared under the strain of an impossible choice. And it is precisely in these cracks that we, the witnesses, find our own reflection. We see our personal battles in their public one, understanding that every path of progress is paved with its own unique pain, and that even the most solid and glittering of crowns are not immune to the fractures that come with the burden of leadership. This story, in the end, is a powerful testament to a paradoxical truth, that the most lasting and profound reforms are often born not from a place of untouchable power, but from the raw, vulnerable soil of heartbreak. It challenges us to look inward and ask ourselves the most difficult of questions, inviting a moment of quiet reflection on the choices that define our own lives and the prices we are willing to pay for the futures we seek to build.